Hello, Facebook. You guys have roles. There were Weathersfield police that faked conversation with me as a kid and I was an adult. They had wire crime acts and methods. A bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court with the FBI, including co-defendants of former director of the FBI. They have roles with predicate acts with facts on off campuses with child abusers, leaders, and kids. First forced, proven, but years apart. And with the people that forced that, not told on, and worse increasingly people as the same ones involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts. So, in other words, and the people with the prisons, people with the corrections offices of Connecticut and the judicial branch offices of Connecticut, a whole bunch of people tied to the ones involved near me with the name Cololo, involved with a cousin named Phil Cololo, that Weathersfield Police and that a Whiting Forensics as a Bob Chase, involved with falsified police reports, and then with arrays of them, with other departments too, with different arrests, etc. They're putting fake things in databases increasingly since I was a kid, with people with their extended family members and people associated with the locations. With all natures of investigations, investigators at countries A through Z are used and have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. Also to use the styles of pretended integrity, only capable of being per the names of the people the science is where and how this is a method that was from off them. There are sustained collusions with it. But right where those are recorded, we could discern people blame, forcing other things others ourselves blame for things our founders and that America's founders and that nature itself communicated for us to blame on the human fact cheap nature breaching method. And I read that we were supposed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison and as his plan. It was his plan they used to counter extort key people inside more than 13 colonies were entrenched with crazy laws against everyone and an extent of collusions against everyone else. Proper science and honesty would have revealed the proper answers. I didn't even read the book, and I know the proper answer. In other words, about how to explain what Jim Crow laws are about. I mean, not Jim Crow. Harriet Beecher Stowe. She has a Mark Twain house right there, coupled with a Harriet Beecher Stowe house, coupled with a Mark Twain house. And they have you know, roles with the breaching method that keeps everyone blaming other things, others, ourselves. Besides itself, otherwise it senses bodies sensing that and starting to blame the breaching method properly. For example, that which had slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, sickly distinctly, but sickly non distinctly too. And then America's founders were born. And that's just one of many proofs that no one had free speech. Everyone's difference is used. Tactical ulterior from how nature shows us to appreciate it and how our founders themselves have showed us to appreciate it. Don't forget, our founders had to counter extort the other founders. And everyone was against the law for anyone even be thinking about that. In other words, I learned in notes at Central Connecticut State University that if anyone was found out to have been speaking about building infrastructure outside of internationally monitored conversations, even if they heard people speak about it and they didn't tell on them, they were in so much trouble. There was a torture method mixed. What made someone that like the Uncle Tom is a torture method, extortion, and a fact cheap nature slavery, therefore physically slavery method. What made the difference, makes you guys differences now when you speak about it, you speak about it through a system's tactical terror from the one that is the human species body of individual bodies. All group differences generated by itself. We know this because it's not us that generated completely different species bodies with quality aspects in nature, distinct but also non-distinct, and simultaneously, but also present as in a distinct identity of simultaneous nature. Besides how they were, like, for example, the names of individual countries, A through Z, they are distinct, simultaneous natures. As members of the species body, which is a simultaneous nature, but it is also an individual simultaneously. Everything is showing us this hyper invisible but still discernible hyperconjunction we have to all things. Well, not as them, but as them anyway, so we can discern it, even as ourselves. Humanity didn't invent how we are a species body. Even if we invented it, humanity starts inventing species bodies. The system, it's a little bit before we were. I mean, we know we could discern a little to an extent. We know before, we were shown proofs it was before us and after us, but as us too. See, but with as us as a special difference, relativity. Earth has a special difference everyone's ignoring. The same reason everyone ignored how there's a breaching method that in play, what slavery was about, what Jim Crow laws are about, what witch trials are about. Why is there a witch trials place right just a hop, skip, and jump diagonally across the street from Webb House, where George Washington had to come with James Madison's plan to counter-extort, to leave slavery forced entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, and they couldn't even voice about it because they would have been sensed by the hyper-foreign right through international companies, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, names that campus next to the difference of all natures, all postures of integrity, of difference. Collusion/S. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. There are revelations that come with this. Other species bodies have two eyes. In other words, but we have other, right where we should be appreciating what nature communicates with us, projects to us. We have other things, others ourselves, forced, pretended, legitimate theory, and with convictions, accurate. Not one even allows people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. It would have brought up how he was using James Madison's plan. Or that we were directed to refer to them as James Madison's plan. And they declassified how and why. Clearer than day, James Madison didn't have free speech, or he would have been censored, just like any body would have been, including if that body was a majority of people, including if that body was a whole country. And that's adapted to any grouping of countries that can't discern the method /S at all location, /S everywhere the species body is. Their locations, areas, of state styles, needs, natures of attribute nature, quality, aspect, nature, can't defend that and afford the right answer anywhere to cause positive value, nature, progressions, acts, and means out of nowhere for everyone, everywhere at once, too. Otherwise, we sense it and know it's wrong. Boxing is strong. So, in other words, so there's a Judge Joe Brown, and there's a shock and awe regarding crime and punishment, while the punishment locations are still roles where they're keeping people's mouths shut. The courts, and the difference of the court skill, a whole bunch of countries, even where the courts are the ones where sometimes it's them the ones that are most criminally foreign influence. And the difference of it, because a whole bunch of countries shared here and there at the same time, they're demonstrating and they have demonstrated that they have been using such directions to hide such. Because they have families shared here and there with colleges and universities as the names of the people of the sciences. And they have they've been locked together through an system's tactical ulterior from how nature has us shown. We are an individual species body of individual bodies with all group differences demonstrated by that one, how they are generated by that one distinct identity of value/value progression. Again, that one we could discern because it's not us that invented how fish have two eyes, birds, and us at the same time. That's what we are being shown. See, anyone could just pretend that they don't understand something or things that are debatable and say, oh, we'll take it to the courts or call the police, especially if the police are still collusion. To keep like the proper evidence is like we have black people's white devices is hyper evidential, so to speak. All whisper creed. All names are stole. Let all behold. Boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. They were not about fighting, but by the rules. But the rules have been abridged, tactically abridged, / hyper tactically, in ways that other people don't know with the tactics individually grouped together. Peak identities of peak sophistication. Only sophistication has criminal and sadist natures, of positive treatments, negative treatments. The difference of that, which is not just identity, but identity's semi-nature relationship to that identity of value/value progression that is only increasingly valued and is making more of its identity of forever nature through temporary / lasting space nature. Black pupils, this is what English was revealed to teach, and how it was revealed to be taught. In boxing, martial arts, and wrestling, where nature shows them grouped, they are about fighting, but by the rules. But again, they have been tactically abridged since some ancient times. It's just remind. So we have been prevented how they have functioned from as with and for the other sciences. Everyone, you guys are all styles of fact-keeping nature, too. We deny the significance, the validity of having black pupils, whites of eyes. And what both nature communicated about that and what our founders communicated about that, denied and replaced. All pace, and there are self-valued roles with use/uses of their words, leaving out what they declassify about it. Leaving out what nature too shows us no one had free speech and why and how. See that where they lean you guys into a fake, cross your hands, fake it till you make it, any kind of virtue, like being good. The difference between good and evil. No, we have the same color eyes, different color. Everything is about its hyper difference. Pantheism is more probably having been about this. Singular. It's also nature itself shows it is a distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. Like, for example, all the parts of speech, of the not just of English, like subject. A subject, we can only appreciate subjects individually, grouped, and simultaneously to an extent. Except for how there are revelations instantly, the things we know because we are its identity. We see a species body that we never saw before, like someone saw a kangaroo and they never saw it. Well, everyone was going to see a kangaroo in a picture, but some kids never see a kangaroo. You guys pretended that it was debatable when people said it's about torture, extortion, and slavery method, the design of our cities, of our suburbs, let alone of our cities. It's designed to measure and maintain roles, self-value Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if that body is a majority of people, including if it's everyone of an entire country. And then it's sustained that method without anyone knowing. Everyone has methods, styles, but per it. So there's a difference between fighting by the rules, but there's also a difference between fighting by the rules, but rules are bridged. And while everyone's tactically / hyper tactically you guys don't have the, in other words, everyone needs to be re-educated as the human species body of individual body system. Pantheism was revealed to work functionally with the republic for which we stand, with the campus Marcius it works with, and exceptions, because it knows that nature stays functional, how it is a distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible. So knows anyone's not appreciating the exceptions. They don't get it. Because if we're speaking about the republic, the campus Marcius system that goes with it, and its functions. In other words, we're speaking about the invisible but still discernible. If we're speaking about how and why we need more than one name for a verb, now we can discern the invisible but still discernible. It's functional how it is hyper invisible but still discernible, distinct. It's that same distinct identity of simultaneous nature, of value / value progression. That is not our species body, is not the other species body, but is all things anyway. It's one of the reasons why many pray. But also a human fact-shaping nature breaching method is that which is hyper-foreign. As a method that knew, effectively it got countries A through Z without right through their foundings to blame other things, others or self, for things that the breaching method caused and forces kept. And it makes examples with all those truths already right there to justify it. That never went away. It's relative to where and how someone could do it, because now we can start stacking disciples, the simultaneous. This is also hyper programming. I shouldn't give away. In other words, to prove it, I have to prove it, because Judge Napolitano's social media has roles with a whole bunch of people next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, which is also next to the state capitol now. In other words, through time, involved with acting tied to people putting predicate acts with facts in databases. They need to pretend for other motivations, nature's needs, interests. Increasingly. So in other words, that's why they can't get in paper nowadays. These increasingly people tied to it as Mendez police brothers. They have roles. One of them attached me to a fake conference. I didn't speak with either of them at the police station ever in my life. One of them I never had a word with in my life, verbally. I went like, I don't even think I said hello. I just nodded to him one time. I walked by, someone told me his name. I don't even know who would say it. I just know that the connections that way, non-verbally, too, with Judge Napolitano. As a stranger made verbally, this spoke to me though. Thaddeus Grabowski repeated when Alison Mulcahy non-verbally demonstrated. She has roles with Thaddeus Grabowski and FBI directors, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, one of his co-defendants in a 2006 district court case. Right before that, she was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by others, involved with people all along conjunctions to the state judicial branches, offices, and conjunctions to that, like along Route 3 and Hangdog Lane, and conjunctions to that. Increasingly people involved with victims advocates and positions at New Britain Superior Court, involved with proven child abusers, leaders of the kids. They had roles with it, with other natures of organized crime too. All kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders. So Wethersfield Police, I didn't even go down there as a kid. When the kids went down there and spoke with the police, They put, in other words, they forced them to write fake things and change what they said and put fake ties, fake natures, or ties to me with people that influence that to be. Wethersfield Police with a Chris Walters and Ray Collo, increasingly involved also with a Tim O'Brien and other people like named Bose. I never had communications with a Bose family. I don't know if that was his sister. Some girl said it was his sister of a Charlie Bose. I never saw him on the inside of a school in my life. I don't even think I saw him on the outside of a school. Even though I went on our coach made it us not talk. I made it. That's why he wanted me so bad to play linebacker. A Coach Hagenbar. Increasingly, people tied to a Coach Hagenbar are putting fake things in databases about me. I never had a personal conversation with Coach Hagenbar. In other words, and other coaches though. There's a Casper family involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids at Harvard Hospital with multiple police forms and intelligence agencies. People with the F.B.I. with the houses next to and businesses next to Harvard Hospital through time, like a Mayano family house, per John Mayano, and his roles with a Demorro's Market, where it is in Rocky Hill, and where it is now, where it is now in Rocky Hill, where it was in Hartford, and also with Aiello. Joe Aiello is also with Facebook, pretending passions and emotions as sequence shifts with a former Mayor Gold's family and other mayors involved with putting fake things in databases, and with the names involved with child abusers, leaders, and kids years apart. These are also people roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the court's names putting sequence shifts at the same time. Fake ties, fake natures of ties between people to cover up how they've been doing that. And these are increasingly people not just with the corrections offices and judicial offices, all kinds of natures of organized crimes, and people next to it or driving by. The difference of that. These are the ones at the campuses with predicate acts of facts, but have people acting tied to it. People next to the news locations with identity theft, fraud, slanders. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them with others. Trantol and Trantol, I barely had any words with them at all. And people that work with them, they pretend I made a conspiracy theory. In other words, they prevent people short sentences, except because that's what they did at the school when I forced them with other things. They still haven't responded to it with the principal recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, brought up all these other names too. They sequence shift too. These are people that put fake conversations with me and others in databases, people of all ages and natures next to the campuses. Further, there's a Phil Collo involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, including with forensics names. Through time, increasingly people tied to them. So it's important. And with the Mendez police that attached me to fake conversations with them as an adult too. There's one of the Mendez brothers. I didn't have any conversation with any police at the Wethersfield police station. I went there to get a police report. What he called stole a sentence from me, made it look like I spoke with him, one of the Mendez brothers, who's also, that's at the Wethersfield Police Department, through my Saudi friend, who's also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, forced to collusions with people named DeMoro and Scalora, and a whole bunch of people at Central Connecticut State University involved with them with intercities through time, with the Mr. Abruzzi, people on campuses, and while putting fake things in databases, having other people repeat that stuff tied to it, acting tied to it. Increasingly, people involved with little kids putting time collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people next to body dumping spots increasingly brought up at the same time. Intercities. These are people making confessions and demonstrations other than they have been pretending in backgrounds with the campuses and with their names next to it. There are like multiple probate court judges concentrated in superior courts and like prosecutors and victims advocates involved with the same house/S, tied with their extended family members or time roles with child abusers, leaders of kids, and their kids involved with it. They had something to do with their roles with the town lines too. The same ones that are involved with all sides of cases, and the courts putting fake things in databases at the same time with the news, interstates too, with the World Trade Center attack. You see them talking about how it's because they're prisons. They're in other words, that's because they're certain kind of they're rapists with their identity theft, fraud, slanders rules too. They're refusing to identify themselves legitimately. Sandy Hook Prisons has roles with a principal upskirt nature and with a serial killer. In other words, and then people involved with a police chief Cintron and 1 years ago, and a Cintron family from Puerto Rico. A bunch of people from Puerto Rico involved with a police chief Cintron, a Mazzacado bakery, and a modern pastry. They have a John Maiano involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, sequence chefs with a whole bunch of different countries, and these DeMoros too, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, child abusers, leaders of kids, first force, and more now. Yeah, men and women too with the campuses, and it wouldn't be that way if you could have people to follow mandated law. See, they want to go back and forth with issues and go fishing with cases dishonestly, but they need to hide how they already done that. That's all their nature itself is demonstrating it. And our father, you guys have changed the whole wire crime acts and methods. They put fake transcripts at campuses. There's also other abuses of girls on and off campuses. With the one, no, even if they made it up, what's his name? A Detective Samuda is involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin and Heather Hansen, involved with her syntax regarding. My father told me that she told him that she was raped by one of the DeMoros, Joe DeMoro, John DeMoro, made confessions about that to me. When I was a little kid, to pretend he knew me. He wanted to have some increasingly people involved with that, with a Mike Levine, and people next to the Town Line Drive shopping center, other shopping centers, and malls involved with them, with town lines too. People with town lines all along roads and routes. There are a bunch of people with the Britain Superior Court through time. A whole bunch of different police departments, even a traffic cop stop along Route 3, involved with women within the Britain Superior Court, involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, tied to that. And them leaking while they pretend other, because these are also time collusions, uses of their own differences and of other people's differences, including as religious nutbags, pretending that are involved with mass transcripts racketeering, evidence racketeering collusions. Those locations have with the crime scenes from there, including the campuses, increasingly as a crime scene being used to replace our founders' communications and nature's communications and maintain self-valued roles. Everyone I went to, basically, of my campuses will confess, demonstrate, record this is true because I minded my own business. These are people that have been using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. They never had legitimate roles into branch. But we're not, if we make guilt on that, leaving out the actual acts, then we're leaving out the hyper-foreign involved. There are overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, a whole bunch of different natures of organized crime at the locations they have involved too. Like and the difference of at or next to Connecticut news locations like Fox Connecticut News, WTNH. WTNH has sources from the founding locations and next to them. People on Church Street, on corners of the street on Church Street, have roles with a whole bunch of medical and sexual wire mail crime roles with Hartford Hospital and the names next to it. with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, roles with all kinds of natures of federal evidence, criminally foreign influence uses of the databases at Central Connecticut State University, with the names involved, intercities with the child campuses through time. Increasingly, people tied to a Leahy family has roles with medical families. I never saw him on my street in my life. I never saw him inside a campus. They had they made a couple exceptions. Someone said their name to me and they walked by, so I remember their name. Never had a personal conversation with them. A Leahy family is one of the ones at Hartford Hospital. Men and women in their family involved with a Collo house and O'Brien house, with all kinds of nature, and with a whole bunch of judges, personally and professionally, with their family members, and ones that had intimate ties that were involved with probate court judges and their family members, that are increasingly involved with people like with this corrections offices, but a whole bunch of different time and judicial branch offices. But like with that, where they're bringing up Syria's roles in other countries, they're bringing up differences. They're having to speak about. In other words, they should be talking about the difference about how there's impositions caused by nuclear that are inseparable from how we hunger and thirst now through jobs that are unnatural, away by nature. In other words, we need energy, and we need it for defense too. But their nature of defense at A through Z is from suburbs that were designed before our founders were born, and then suburban/urban the same way. That was forced right through our founders communicated about this. You guys have our founders declassified in communications replaced or pace. Some start to chant, some whisper, I'll get us through. Ugh. They even have time rolls with the comments. Facebook has a Joshua Julian involved with them on YouTube with extortion of me with Facebook. Has roles with former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskey, his co-defendants, and their family members. Involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, people on off awaiting forensics and state police through time. And their neighbors of the co-defendants, like Eric Jensen, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He has roles with Dominic Liberato. Another one, Thaddeus Grabowski, has roles with Allison Mulcahy and her neighbors, and Mike DeMaine, Adam DeMaine, and their parents, and their families. Their proofs, their extended family members, because the people involved with them, like a Rick Cianfaglione, involved with also with a Fred Grisette, and a Kevin Harris has roles with the Harris. I never had a word of conversation with Kevin Harris. They try to make it look like I know him. He's involved with people from Quinnipiac University, with planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders, fake ties, fake natures of ties between, and fake transcripts, and fake audio and video on campuses where people, in other words, they're pretending things are recorded and that weren't even real. I never saw Eric Burgess on a campus in my life, but he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A former Dean Judd and his family is involved with them, also with other leaders of kids at child campuses and next to parks. They don't know the extent of it, but they have roles in the Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts with former director of the F.B.I, Robert Luskin, and others I didn't know the names of it at the time. They're increasingly involved with an Officer Hunter with Central Connecticut State University and with Harper Courts too. I saw him from a distance. I never had a conversation with him on a campus in my life, the Officer Hunter, and the locations involved with him, like not far from the Harry Beecher Stowe house, Mark Twain house. He has roles and on Park Street with people with the F.B.I and the families and intimate ties of the Hartford courts. Like Eric Burgess recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, people in the Britain Superior Court and Harper Courts. and leasing agents at their spots in their roles with people. I found out also a bunch of ways. The retired police chiefs have roles with their extended family members and intimate ties with that spot, with the people with the Mazzucato Bakery. And I'm sorry, Mazzucato, in other words, this is the people that make confessions, like with this Jonathan Mayano involved with sequence shifts, and with this Fred Grisey, they say is tied to you, and Mike Roberts. Mike Roberts asked me to go to get on his motorcycle, and they had little things. I stood on it. There were proofs that someone took a picture of me there. And Jonathan Mayano and some girl at Trinity College would look at me and what do you call handing me a bottle of alcohol. A Mike Pandolf involved with the Jonathan Mayano, who pretended I threw up in his car. Pretty sure I didn't throw up in the car. In other words, I remember all these things. They're trying to make, these are people that are increasingly trying to put fake ties, fake nature ties to me. And people trying to sell me things, which is very important to me, because these are people involved with child abuses of mixed natures. They're not just all sexual, but these are sexual too. They even have, because they keep the nature of syntax, the nature of subject treatments. Collusions blame the other thing, ourselves, and demonstrations of that.